Everybody's favorite website to download just about anything, archive.org is inching ever closer towards oblivion after having lost yet another legal battle. And there's more legal battles looming on the horizon. I don't foresee any possible way that the Internet Archive can afford to pay the fines that are inevitably going to be levied against them for all of these legal losses. It is just too astronomical. I'm going to go into all of it now, but if you like the archive.org, use it while you can, because it can't be long for this world. And I just want to say flat out, please don't shoot the messenger on this one. I'm just crunching the numbers, looking at the legal documents, and saying what seems to be happening. I like the Internet Archive. I use it a lot. I use it a ton. Every single week I use it in my business. It is absolutely an invaluable resource, but I don't see how it can exist all that much longer. I'm going to read this article to you now that was posted over at the Lunduke Journal, over at lunduke.locals.com. You can read along with me if you like. Let's get started with this. The United States Court of Appeals, Second Circuit, just issued a ruling that was just this week, just about 2 days ago, against the Internet Archive, archive.org, rejecting their appeal and upholding a previous ruling against them in the Hatchett versus Internet Archive legal battle. Make no mistake, this is very, very bad news for both the Internet Archive, archive.org users, as well as other archival projects, because, this gives a lot of ammunition to any company or any copyright holder that wants to go against, take legal action against someone for backing up some of their material. Let's go into this in detail. So this is the short version of Hatchett versus Internet Archive. So for many years, the Internet Archive has been creating digital copies of physical books by scanning them. Very cool process, actually. They built these really cool book scanners that semi-automatically, turn the pages and scanned just huge numbers of physical books into digital copies. They then allowed people to borrow those digital versions from archive.org. Now, in theory, they limited the total digital books being lent out to the count of the physical books in the archive's possession. That was in theory, wasn't 100% in practice, but was in theory. Now, they never, and this is important, obtained permissions from the author or publishers to do any of this, right? So all of the books that they scanned, they never got permission for. The books that they posted to archive.org, they never got permission for, right? They never really even talked to these authors about doing it. And in 2020, during the COVID lockdowns, the Internet Archive launched the National Emergency Libraries, what they called it. The point of that was to remove that one physical book to one digital book lent out restriction, meaning that anybody on the internet could obtain digital scans of physical books, and the archive could lend out an unlimited number of digital copies based on a single physical copy of book. So the Internet Archive could grab the first book of Harry Potter, and they have one copy of it. They scan it, and then in theory, 1 billion people could go and download the PDF version of it from archive.org. That was the sort of system that they built in place. Now, again, and this is really critically important, they never obtained permission to do this from the writers, from the publishers, copyright holders, none of it. Thus, to the surprise of absolutely nobody, Hatchett versus Internet Archive, the legal battle, began. It was obviously always going to begin. The Lunduke Journal said this was inevitable. Everyone with half a brain cell about how copyright law currently works, not how we think it should work, but how it currently works, was like, yeah, that is what's going to happen here. And the Internet Archive lost that battle. Again, obviously, it was going to lose that battle because the law was not on the side of the Internet Archive. The judge ruled in favor of the publishers, which included Hatchett, Wiley, Penguin, Random House, HarperCollins. I mean, this was a who's who of publishers. And naturally, obviously, the Internet Archive appealed that ruling. But oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, everybody. Their appeal was a strange one, which was destined to fail. And I just want to go briefly through the very, very strange appeal of the Internet Archive, because that's what got ruled on this week. It is bizarre. On April 19th of 2024, the Internet Archive filed their final brief in their attempt to appeal the ruling against them. In that ruling, one of the Internet Archive's core arguments, this is baffling, was that it cost the Internet Archive a lot of money to make so many digital copies of books without permission. So, therefore, the Internet Archive should be allowed to do it. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, but that is not a joke or an exaggeration. It sounds weird because it is weird. The Internet Archive truly attempted to make the case that spending a lot of money committing a crime should make that crime legal, should make it so that whoever is committing the crime should be allowed to do it because it was just so expensive. Could you imagine, like, the mafia? Could you imagine Tony Soprano going into court and saying, Your Honor, I know the shakedown thing I was doing with all these businesses was illegal. I know I was committing racketeering and all these other things, but my organization spent millions of dollars getting everything set up, so you should let us continue, right? It's a crazy argument. They made other arguments too. None of them made any sense. None of them were logical from the point of view of the law as it currently stands or the facts in the case. You can read the full analysis by the Lunduke Journal of the appeal, including the full appeal itself, so you can, have all the details. I linked to that in the article so you can go through it. The reality is there was never any chance that the Internet Archive's attempted appeal was going to be successful. It just was not. It almost seems crafted to be a failure. Like it's almost confusing how they could possibly have come up with this defense and expected to succeed. Their defensive arguments were illogical, bordering on flights of fancy, and they brought nothing new or noteworthy to the case, and it was painfully obvious. I pointed it out tons of times, which caused, by the way, several prominent figures within the Internet Archive to block me and ban me on various social media platforms, and a couple people badmouthed me in a few different venues. It was ridiculous. It was utterly ridiculous. Again, I'm a fan of the Internet Archive. I want to see them succeed, but they can't. They can't succeed with the way they're structured here. So, on Wednesday, September 4th of 2024, just this last week, the opinion was handed down from the United States Court of Appeals. While the ruling is roughly 64 pages long, I'm going to read to you a single paragraph from the second page that really summarizes the whole kit and caboodle. Quote, "This appeal presents the following question. Is it fair use for a nonprofit organization to scan copyright-protected print books in their entirety and distribute those digital copies online in full for free, subject to a 1-to-1 own-to-loan ratio between its print copies and the digital copies it makes available at any given time? All without authorization from the copyright holding publishers or authors, applying the relevant provisions of the Copyright Act, as well as the binding Supreme Court and Second Circuit precedent, we conclude the answer is no. Therefore, we affirm." Basically meaning that they affirm the recent ruling. That was the Internet Archive was guilty. They did badly. They ruled in favor of the publishers, and they've affirmed it and upheld that. You can read the whole 64-page ruling for yourself. I linked to it again in the article. It's a big PDF. And some of it is actually quite interesting. What's great is, and I linked to this also, you can also read it on archive.org, which is just whimsical and ironic. I love it. But that single line really sums it up quite nicely. All the other arguments are almost irrelevant because there was that one core question, right? Is it fair use to scan copyright protected print books in their entirety and distribute those digital copies online in full for free without the authorization, permission, or even notification in this case of the copyright holding publishers or authors? Well, no, you can't. So the Internet Archive was disappointed. They were very disappointed about this particular ruling. So they issued a statement, a very short statement. I'm going to read it to you in entirety now. We are, quote, "We are disappointed in today's opinion." I'm sure they are. About the Internet Archive's digital lending of books that are available electronically elsewhere. We are reviewing the court's opinion and will continue to defend the rights of libraries to own, lend, and preserve books. Now, the really weird part about that statement is that books that are available electronically elsewhere is an irrelevant statement. The books are available electronically elsewhere. In services and libraries, including lots of libraries, tons of libraries have many of the books that that the Internet Archive had scanned and stored. Other libraries, but those libraries reached deals with the publishers to do so, oftentimes for free or very, very, very cheap, from the side of the library. And so, but they did so with the publishers. They followed copyright law when they did it. So the fact that the Internet Archive is pointing to other people have digital copies, why can't we? That's a very strange legal defense in the whole thing. It's very, very peculiar. It's all really weird. So what happens now? Because this is when it really gets important, is what exactly happens now. The Internet Archive has been sued by some of the biggest book publishers, and it's lost. The Internet Archive appealed it and lost. So what happens next? Well, unfortunately, both the Internet Archive and us, the users, the future looks pretty bleak. First and foremost, has the Internet Archive made and distributed digital copies of work that you might own? Well, this ruling will certainly not hurt your case should you decide to take legal action against archive.org. And holy smokes, the amount of copyrighted material on archive.org is absolutely massive. Right? So the archive.org software repository alone, just to give you an example, contains millions of items, with a very large number of them being copyrighted material. Games, full operating systems, office suites, tons and tons, accounting software, lots of copyrighted material. The vast majority, overwhelming 99+%, I just pulled that number out of the air, but it seems right, of it was posted there without the permission of the copyright owner. Now, simply going by the numbers, here's how much material is available on archive.org roughly. 832 billion archived web pages, 38 million printed materials, so magazines, books, etc., 2.6 million pieces of software, 11.6 million video files, and that includes TV shows, movies, bootleg recordings, all sorts of stuff, 15 million audio files, including full albums, that are currently under copyright, a ton of stuff, and 4.7 million images. Now, how many of those items do you think are there without the explicit written permission, or possibly even the knowledge of the owners or creators? It's a lot. It's a whole lot. And every single one now has an increasingly strong case when looking at potential legal action against the Internet Archive. And it's about to get even worse for the Internet Archive, because let's talk about UMG Recordings v. Internet Archive. That's right. The book publishers were not the only ones taking legal action against archive.org. And this next one could be even bigger. Universal Music Group and Sony have an ongoing lawsuit against the Internet Archive regarding the distribution of 2,749 specific audio recordings with potential damages, hold on to your seats on this one, upwards of $412 million. That's seriously, we're talking close to $500 million in damages. Holy heavens. A quick quote from the suit. Plaintiffs bring this suit to address defendants' massive ongoing violations of plaintiffs' rights in protected pre-1972 sound recordings as part of what defendants have dubbed what the Internet Archive called the Great 78 Project. Internet Archive, Blood, and have willfully reproduced thousands of plaintiffs' protected sound recordings without authorization by copyright by copying physical records into digital files. Internet Archive then willfully uploaded, distributed, and digitally transmitted those illegally copied sound recordings millions of times from Internet Archive's websites. And that includes like albums from Frank Sinatra and a whole bunch of other people that they point out here. Now, does all of this sound familiar? It's digital copies of a work that wasn't originally digital. No permission from the artists or publishers were obtained, and free downloads were given to everyone. And the publishers and the artists, and nobody saw a cut of anything. They never saw any sort of compensation for any of that. This is the same exact sort of lawsuit. And the more that these exact sort of lawsuits get ruled on, it's going to be increasingly hard for the Internet Archive to mount a defense. I mean, what sort of defense are they going to mount against this that they haven't already tried? I mean, they're going to have to change their strategy entirely to have even the slightest hope of success. And I don't see that happening. But naturally, the Internet Archive attempted to have this suit dismissed, right? But their attempt was denied back in May of this year. Because if there's one constant in life, it's that the Internet Archive always loses in court. That case, Sony and Universal v. Internet Archive, is going forward. Yeah, that's really happening. There's a little screenshot if you're watching the video version or reading the article of the particular lawsuit. So what happens? Let's think about this logically. What happens if the Internet Archive loses this UMG and Sony case? What happens if they are ordered to pay $412 million in damage? Now, I want to say flat out, the Internet Archive already is going to have to pay the publishers in the Hachette, Random House, blah, blah, blah case, right? They're already going to have to pay them an undisclosed amount. Now, we're going to find out at some point what that amount is, but we don't know currently. However, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. Even if that number is fairly low, it's going to take a pretty big chunk out of the bottom line of the Internet Archive. But $412 million in damages? To put it simply, archive.org does not have that kind of money. They just don't. They bring in roughly $20 million, give or take, per year, which may seem like a lot, but most of that goes towards running the gosh darn thing. And this type of legal liability would absolutely destroy the Internet Archive. Not make it have a hard day, but obliterate them. They would not be able to exist. And here's the thing, the Internet Archive is almost assuredly going to lose that Sony and Universal lawsuit, just as it lost the lawsuit against the publishers, because the basics in the case are really roughly similar, and their defense is likely to be similar as well. Regardless of what you, I, or anyone else thinks of the Internet Archive, and make no mistake, I'm going to repeat this in the hopes of some of you deciding to not yell at me. I use that service several times a week and I love it, right? The ability to go back and look at old newspapers and old magazines from the 1960s is incredibly handy. It essentially takes the place of the LexisNexis for me. The law here, regardless of what we think, is incredibly clear and very well tested, and becoming increasingly well tested directly in regards to the Internet Archive. The Internet Archive runs one of the largest, if not the largest, website of pirated and stolen digital material on the planet. Sure, it may also provide extremely valuable and often very legal services as well, but that doesn't make those crimes go away. And with each legal defeat, the Internet Archive grows increasingly vulnerable to additional attacks. And one additional point I want to point out here. The Internet Archive, from a organizational structure, is one singular entity, meaning they did not split off and create a nonprofit or for-profit, etc., organization or corporation or foundation to run their national emergency library where they gave out an unlimited number of ebooks without permission, right? That wasn't a separate organization. So all of it, the Wayback Machine, the software archives, the image archives, the pre-1920 something audio recordings, it's all one and the same, the legal stuff and the illegal stuff. So some of the illegal activities will bring down the whole thing. It's almost like they custom designed it this way. It's almost like they're trying to destroy themselves. It's absolutely baffling. Simply being logical about it, it seems highly likely that we'll see additional suits brought against the Internet Archive in the months ahead. Books, music, TV shows, software, all of it. Archive.org contains a massive mountain of copyrighted material in all areas, and these are suits which the Internet Archive would be almost certain to lose. I think honestly, the only thing that's going to stop a mountain of more such lawsuits being brought against them is that the Internet Archive is going to run out of money. I think that really is probably the biggest saving grace where we won't see 1,000 new lawsuits, because the Internet Archive isn't going to be able to pay most of it. They're going to be bankrupt and completely dissolved with every asset they have sold off long before they finish paying off all the people that are suing them. It's just likely to happen. And I don't see any way that any of those suits fail. If their lawyers are worth even $1.50, it's almost impossible to lose these suits. And with this reality looming, how long until archive.org will be forced to shut down entirely? Essentially by the actions of archive.org themselves. I mean, they almost custom designed this to bring themselves down, and it can't be far off. And it'll be a sad day. It'll be a very sad day. And I want to repeat something here. The Internet Archive, archive.org, they had to know this was coming. They had to. They're not dumb people, right? I've talked with many of them over the years. They are not dumb people. They had to know this was coming. This is truly sad. The leadership of the Internet Archive knew exactly what they were doing. Every step of the way, it was obvious that they were going to lock horns with publishers and lose. I told them repeatedly here at the Lunduke Journal. I linked to a couple of those examples of extremely widely read articles that I know for a fact they read at the Internet Archive. But even if the Lunduke Journal hadn't pointed all this out, it was brutally obvious, and it was a certainty to anyone even mildly familiar with copyright law and the workings of archive.org, which means the Internet Archive knowingly put their entire service at risk, including the Wayback Machine, right, which catalogs the whole of the internet on regular basis at little snapshots, and the massive archive of pre-copyright audio recordings, which is legal. All of that's at risk, and all because they wanted to publish copyrighted material against the wishes of the authors and publishers. That's just the truth. Whether you agree with the Internet Archive or not is almost irrelevant. That's just the truth. And despite all this, they continue to push a public perception campaign where they pretend that publishers and authors are burning their own books, when the reality is the books are still available a wide variety of ways. Archive.org has simply got in trouble for copying and distributing them without permission. The Internet Archive is also pushing this narrative that this is an attack on libraries in general, because the Internet Archive fancies itself a library. Therefore, they feel like all libraries are under attack. But the reality is far different. Libraries around the country, or at least within the United States, have huge deals in place with massive amounts of publishers to get free or incredibly inexpensive digital copies of huge numbers of books, from textbooks to works of popular fiction and everything in between. Not every library, and sure, there are going to be plenty of examples where some of the libraries couldn't come to a reasonable deal with one publisher or another, but by and large, it's coming together. And if you want to come to me and say, hey, it should be easier for libraries to have and lend out digital copies of books. Okay, I'm ready to have that conversation. In fact, I would probably agree with that statement in general. However, the way the Internet Archive is handling this is disingenuous. They are not telling the truth here. This is not an attack on libraries. This is not a book burning, right? I saw several tweets or X posts or whatever of the Internet Archive talking about how ironic it is because 1984 and Fahrenheit 451 are among the books, because I think they're HarperCollins or something like that, are among the books that are not allowed to be digitally published on archive.org, right? Because they're part of this court ruling. And they're like, oh, isn't it ironic? Fahrenheit 451, where it's all about burning books. They won't let people read their books. Well, no, the books are still available in a wide variety of print editions, a wide variety of digital editions, and in libraries across the country, both in physical and digital forms, for free for everyone to check out. Right? Not to mention used bookstores across the planet. The one place that it's being limited is the one that, well, violated copyright law in massive bulk. But the Internet Archive is trying to twist things. They're trying to portray this as something that it's absolutely not. And that is a very strange, very peculiar strategy. Here's that example. They also removed Fahrenheit 451. And they little flame emoji, and oh, come on. And something I find truly fascinating about all of this is that the Lunduke Journal will, as usual, get yelled at rather extensively for this article and this show that I'm doing right now, and for simply pointing out the current reality of copyright law and how the Internet Archive has knowingly violated it, right? I'm going to get yelled at for that a lot. Because people love archive.org, and I understand why. I love archive.org. And people are allowing their love for that website to convince them that anyone being critical of it must necessarily be bad and evil, an enemy, someone to be fought, who must be necessarily wrong, maybe even a Nazi. Guarantee someone will call me that because of this. But it is not the Lunduke Journal who's putting the Internet Archive in danger of being shut down. Neither, I might point out, is it Sony, Hachette, Random House, or HarperCollins who are putting the Internet Archive in danger. No, sir. The only one putting the Internet Archive in danger is the Internet Archive itself. They did this on purpose. They structured their organization in such a way that this was bound to happen. And they pushed aggressively to violate copyright law. And they did it in such a way where they were basically flipping the bird at all of these publishers, daring them to attack the Internet Archive. And of course they did. And the law is on the side of the writers and the musicians and the copyright holders and the publishers. It just is. In this case, it is. So here we go. How long will archive.org continue to exist? I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. Excuse me. It really depends on how long until the various punishment phases of each individual case are pushed forward and the Internet Archive is forced to pay up. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And that could be drug out for a while. So realistically, depending on when additional cases come down, depending on when and how much they have to pay up for the publisher case, depending on what happens with the Sony and Universal case, it could be a few months. It could be a year or two. I would be absolutely dumbfounded if it went beyond that. I just reasonably looking at it, there's so much legal activity against the Internet Archive, and they're losing all of it by design. They chose to lose it all. It's like they wanted to lose it all. I legitimately don't understand their lawyers. I don't understand the Internet Archive's executives. It doesn't make any sense. They're trying to destroy themselves. They obviously are. Why? I couldn't tell you. I don't know. I have reached out to several people from the Internet Archive. I have not heard back. I don't know what's going on, but I do not expect them to exist much longer. So that's all there is to that. And I would be genuinely surprised if a company would come in and swoop in and save the Internet Archive. Why? Because they're radioactive, right? These folks are nuclear. And any company that comes in and tries to save the Internet Archive is just going to open that company up to liability. And now the Internet Archive, which brings in, 10, 20 plus $1 million a year and has very limited pocketbooks when we're talking about fines upwards of close to $500 million. Well, now all of a sudden, like, what if Google or Microsoft or Amazon or someone comes in and saves the Internet Archive and continues to run it? Well, now there's much deeper pocketbooks for all of these lawsuits. Now every single software publisher, book publisher, author, etc., who has their works having been published and downloaded on the Internet Archive, well, they're going to sue, and they're going to make a lot of money off of it, and they're going to bankrupt whatever company comes in to save them. So the Internet Archive is going to die. It's gonna happen. The question is how long is it going to take, and which of these lawsuits is going to be the final nail in the coffin? We'll wait and see. I want to say thanks real quickly to all of the subscribers to the Lunduke Journal over at lunduke.locals.com or just lunduke.com. You keep the lights on here, and I get to run all of this without any ads, any corporate sponsorships, just all of you making all this happen. It's absolutely beautiful. So thank you to all of you who do that. And if you want to get everything I do, go to lunduke.locals.com. All the articles, everything goes there. So if you're like, I don't remember seeing this article anywhere. This article isn't on the YouTubes. No, it's not. No, it's not. You got to go over to lunduke.locals.com for that. All right. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds and nerdettes across the inner tubes, I do declare, end broadcast.